The Valari were once a respected people. Long ago, their cities shined with silver towers, and their knowledge of science and healing was admired across the galaxy. They were known for their wisdom and skill in creating medicines that could cure diseases other civilizations could not, but things do not always stay the same. A great disaster fell upon their world, and everything changed. Their home planet, Valerian, had once been filled with lush forests, wide rivers, and skies filled with strange glowing birds. But then a chain of volcanic eruptions darkened the skies. Crops failed, the air grew heavy with ash, and the land that once gave them food turned into dry, cracked soil. The Valari had once traded freely with other civilizations, but when they asked for help during their darkest days, no one came. Part of the reason was fear. The Valari were different from most other known species. Their bodies required protein-rich meals to stay strong. They could not live on plants alone as many others did. Long ago, when other races discovered this, they began to spread rumors. The Valari are dangerous. They are carnivorous. They cannot be trusted. This label stuck with them for centuries. Whenever Valari traders tried to sell goods or ask for help, they were met with whispers, suspicion, and cold stares. They are predators, some would say. Keep them away from our worlds. No one asked the Valari about their true nature. No one cared to learn that they hunted no more than humans once did on Earth. No one cared that their diet was a part of survival, not cruelty. Over time, the rejection grew stronger. One by one, the other civilizations cut ties. The Valari found themselves isolated, abandoned, and forsaken. Their ships rusted in empty docks. Their libraries of knowledge sat untouched, and their proud leaders looked out across silent cities where laughter was rare and hope was fading. Generations of children grew up hearing the same sad truth. No one will help us. No one will stand with us. We are alone. Those words carved deep scars in their hearts. Even the strongest among them began to believe that their people were cursed. Yet, even in the shadows of despair, the Valari did not give up completely. They sent out signals, weak transmissions that traveled across the stars. Most went unanswered. Some were even returned with cruel messages mocking their suffering. Still, they kept trying, hoping someone, somewhere, might hear and choose differently. Then, a rumor began to spread among the Valari. It was whispered first by scouts who had traveled far before their ships broke down. They spoke of a strange new species from a blue planet called Earth. This species was young compared to others, but unlike most, they were curious. They were bold, and most importantly, they did not seem afraid of differences. At first, the Valari did not know what to think. Was this another false hope? Another story to keep their children quiet at night? But the more they listened to interstellar channels, the more they heard about these beings, humans. Stories described them as adaptable survivors, and yes, carnivorous too. They were said to eat plants, fruits, and meats alike, depending on what their land gave them. To other species, this seemed barbaric, but to the Valari, it meant something else. For the first time in countless years, the Valari felt a spark of connection. "They are like us," whispered the elders. "Perhaps they will understand." Still, there was doubt. Many Valari had been betrayed too often to believe so easily. What if they mock us as the others did? What if they use us and then leave? Us again? The council asked. Fear of another heartbreak weighed heavily on their minds. But time was running out. Food stores were shrinking. Medicines were scarce. Their young ones grew weaker each season. With heavy hearts, the Valari decided to try one last time. They sent out a clear message into the stars, not hiding their nature, not pretending to be something they were not. The message was simple. We are the Valari. We are a people forsaken by all. We need help. Will anyone listen? For many days, there was silence. Their transmission traveled across systems, passing through worlds where governments ignored it, or worse, laughed at it. The Valari sat in their dark council halls, waiting, hoping, and fearing disappointment again. Mothers comforted their children. Fathers stared at empty skies. Elders prayed to the old spirits of Valerian for a miracle, and then the miracle happened. One night, the transmission systems flickered with life. A signal stronger than any they had received before answered back. The words were simple, yet they carried more power than any promise they had ever heard. "This is a crew from Earth. We hear you. You are not alone." The Valari froze. For a long moment, silence filled the great chamber. Could it be true? Was this not a trick? The voice was different from any they had heard before, calm, steady, and filled with sincerity. Children ran into the streets as the news spread. Families gathered in their homes, their eyes shining with tears. For so long, they had been invisible to the galaxy. Now, someone had spoken to them. Someone had said the words they had longed to hear. "You are not alone." The Valari did not know what awaited them with this human crew. They did not know if the stories were true, if these beings were truly as open-hearted as the rumors claimed. But even in their uncertainty, something began to stir among them, something they had not felt in generations. It was hope. The message from the humans brought both excitement and fear to the Valari. For days, their leaders and families debated endlessly. Some were hopeful, saying this was the chance they had been waiting for. Others were cautious, reminding everyone of the times they had trusted outsiders before, only to be left in disappointment. Still, the fact remained. No one else had answered. Only these humans had dared to speak back. The Valari sent another transmission, asking who these humans were and why they had chosen to respond. The reply came quickly. The humans introduced themselves as an exploration crew from Earth, traveling to study distant systems and make peaceful contact with unknown civilizations. They explained they had intercepted the Valari's desperate message and felt they could not ignore it. "If someone asks for help," the human captain said, "we believe it is our duty to answer." This simple statement shook the Valari deeply. No one had spoken to them in such a way in centuries. No one had said it was their duty to help. For generations, the Valari had been told they were dangerous, unworthy, even cursed. Now here was a crew of strangers declaring that help was natural, even necessary. The decision was made to allow the humans to land. The Valari chose a meeting site on a flat plain near their capital city, where an old landing port had been abandoned for decades. It had once welcomed ships from across the stars. Now it stood broken and silent, but for this meeting, it was cleaned and restored as best as possible. Families gathered on rooftops to watch, hearts racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. At last, the human ship appeared in the sky. Unlike the sleek, shining vessels of other civilizations, the human craft looked strong and practical, built for function more than beauty. As it descended, the Valari saw its surface was scarred with the marks of long journeys, but still sturdy, still reliable. Somehow, this seemed fitting. When the ramp lowered, the Valari gasped. The humans stepped out slowly, dressed in simple suits that shielded them from the planet's harsh air. They were not as tall as the Valari, and their skin came in many colors: brown, pale, golden, and dark. Their eyes were curious, alert, but not fearful. Most of all, they were smiling. The Valari Council approached first. Their leader, Elder Maris, stood at the front. She was old, her face lined with years of worry and sorrow, yet her voice was steady as she greeted the newcomers. "Welcome, humans of Earth. You are the first to answer us in centuries." The human captain bowed his head slightly and replied, "Thank you for allowing us to come. We heard your call, and we are honored to be here." The words were simple, but the Valari felt their weight. Other visitors in the past had often come, with arrogance, as if they were superior. These humans, however, spoke with humility and respect. That alone softened the hearts of many who had doubted. The first hours of the meeting were filled with cautious conversation. The Valari shared their struggles, the famine, the broken lands, the empty trade routes. The humans listened without interrupting, their faces showing genuine concern. Then they spoke of Earth, their home. They told stories of how their ancestors had survived harsh winters, storms, and droughts. They explained how humans had learned to adapt, to use every resource, and to never give up, even when survival seemed impossible. What surprised the Valari most was when the humans openly discussed their diet. Unlike other races, the humans did not act ashamed or horrified when speaking of meat. On Earth, one of them said, our bodies need many kinds of food. We eat fruits, grains, vegetables, and also protein from animals. It is not cruelty, it is survival. The Valari were stunned. For so long they had been shunned and labeled because of the same truth. Yet here were these humans, speaking of it openly and without shame. For the first time, the Valari felt seen, felt understood. Elder Maris whispered to her people, "Do you see? They are not afraid of us. They are like us." The humans had not come empty-handed. From their ship, they carried containers filled with food. Some of it was plant-based, others protein-based, carefully prepared so it could suit both human and Valari needs. When the Valari children tasted it, their eyes widened with delight. It was strange, but nourishing, and it filled their empty stomachs. Parents wept quietly, grateful beyond words. As the day went on, the humans explored parts of the city. They walked through streets where buildings crumbled, where fountains no longer flowed, and where markets once busy now stood silent. Instead of recoiling, they nodded thoughtfully, already discussing how repairs might be made. One human engineer pointed at an old water system and said, "We can fix this. It will take time, but it can be done." The Valari watching him felt a warmth in their hearts. No one had spoken of fixing, of rebuilding, in a very long time. Trust began to grow. The Valari realized these humans were not here to take advantage, nor to judge. They were here to stand beside them. Even the children noticed the difference. They followed the humans through the streets asking questions about Earth. The humans answered with patience, telling stories of blue oceans, green forests, and tall mountains where snow never melted. The Valari children laughed with wonder. Imagining such a world, that night a feast was held. Though food was scarce, the Valari prepared what little they could. The humans, in return, shared their own supplies. The two species sat together under the stars, eating, laughing, and exchanging songs. The Valari played soft music with their traditional stringed instruments, while the humans sang simple earth tunes in return. Though the languages were different, the emotions were the same. For the Valari, it was more than a meal. It was a moment of dignity. For the first time in living memory, they were not being treated as outcasts, but as equals. Their children were not being hidden away in shame, but were running freely, dancing to songs that crossed the barriers of species. When the feast ended, Elder Maris stood and looked out at her people. Her voice trembled, but carried across the gathering. "For so long," she said, "we believed we were forgotten. We believed the galaxy had no place for us. But tonight we see the truth. We are not forsaken. We are not alone. These humans have come, and with them, a new beginning." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising into the night sky. Tears flowed freely, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. The humans, moved by the emotion, simply smiled. The Valari knew challenges still lay ahead. Their land was still broken, their future uncertain. But now they had allies, friends, who understood them in a way no one else ever had. The first encounter was not just a meeting of two species. It was the birth of trust, the spark of hope, and the promise of something greater than survival. It was the beginning of friendship. The days after the first meeting passed quickly, but the memory of that night stayed in the hearts of the Valari. They had never imagined sitting side by side with visitors from another world, sharing food, songs, and laughter. For many, it felt like waking from a long, dark dream. Still, the path ahead was not easy. Trust had been planted like a seed, but it needed care and protection to grow. The humans returned to their ship but did not leave the planet. Instead, they asked permission to remain for a while, to study the Valari's needs and offer help where possible. The council agreed, though some members were still unsure. "We have been fooled before," whispered one elder. "What if they are simply pretending to be kind?" Elder Maris, however, shook her head. "No," she said. "I have seen their eyes. I have heard their words. These are not deceivers. They are different." And so the cooperation began. The humans worked side by side with the Valari in the ruined fields. Together they studied the soil, trying to understand why crops no longer grew. The humans were skilled at finding solutions to harsh environments, for their own history was full of struggles against deserts, floods, and storms. They suggested new ways of planting, mixing the old Valari methods with earth techniques. It was not easy, but soon tiny green shoots began to appear where before there had been nothing. Children ran to watch the little plants push through the soil, their laughter filling the air. The humans also explored the broken water systems. Many of the pipes and pumps had been silent for decades, rusting away under layers of dust. The Valari had long lost the knowledge of how to repair them. But the human engineers studied the old designs with fascination. "It can be done," one of them said confidently. With the help of Valari builders, they began to restore the system piece by piece. Days turned into weeks, but then, at last, water began to flow again through ancient channels. Families gathered at the fountains, their hands trembling as they touched the fresh, clean streams. It felt like life itself was returning. But while progress was being made, not everyone was pleased. Other alien civilizations, hearing that the Valari were being helped, began to send warnings. Some messages came cold and sharp, declaring the humans were making a mistake. "You are protecting a dangerous race," they said. "The Valari cannot be trusted. Do not waste your resources on them." When the humans shared these messages with Elder Maris, she lowered her eyes sadly. "This is what we have faced for centuries," she whispered. "The galaxy has already judged us without ever knowing us." The humans listened carefully and then answered with calm voices. "We do not believe rumors. We believe what we see with our own eyes. And what we see are people worthy of friendship." Those words spread quickly through Valari society. Parents repeated them to their children. Teachers spoke them in schools. For the first time in living memory, the Valari began to see themselves not as cursed or unworthy, but as valuable. This shift was small but powerful, like the first light of dawn. After a long night, cultural exchange followed naturally. The humans shared their stories of Earth, the struggles of their ancestors, their traditions, and their arts. They showed the Valari paintings of mountains covered in snow, forests filled with animals, and oceans that stretched endlessly to the horizon. The Valari listened in awe, imagining such wonders. In return, the Valari opened their old libraries, showing their history, their songs, and their ancient dances. One evening, in the city square, a gathering was held. Valari musicians played soft melodies on crystal string instruments, while human crew members clapped in rhythm and even tried to dance along. The sight made the Valari laugh, their worries forgotten for a moment. Then one of the humans took out a small device and played a song from Earth. It was simple, just a gentle tune, but it touched the Valari deeply. For the first time in centuries, their city echoed not with silence, but with music shared between two peoples. The children, as always, were the first to form true bonds. They followed the humans everywhere, asking endless questions. What is snow? What does it feel like to swim in the sea? Why do your eyes look different? The humans answered with patience, sometimes showing holograms or drawings. Soon, the children were imitating human words, laughing at the funny sounds. The humans, in turn, learned a few Valari phrases, speaking them clumsily but with genuine effort. Each attempt brought cheers and laughter. The bond was growing stronger, but challenges remained. There were still those in Valari society who distrusted outsiders. One evening, a group of older Valari gathered and argued loudly. "We cannot depend on these humans forever," one said. "What if they leave us as others did?" Another replied, "But they are already helping us. Without them, we would still be starving." Elder Maris listened quietly and then spoke. "Trust is not built in one day. It must be tested. Let us give them the chance to prove they mean what they say." Her words calmed the fears, though doubt lingered in some hearts. The humans themselves understood this. They did not push the Valari to trust them blindly. Instead, they showed their commitment through actions. Each day, they worked side by side in the fields, the workshops, and the schools. Each evening, they sat with Valari families, listening to stories of pain and loss, and offering their own stories of resilience. Slowly, the walls of fear began to crumble. What stood out most was the way humans treated the Valari children. They did not look at them with suspicion or fear, but with kindness. They played simple games, taught them little songs, and showed them pictures of Earth animals. For children who had grown up believing the galaxy hated them, this was a gift beyond measure. Parents watched with tears in their eyes as their young ones laughed freely again. Bit by bit, the Valari began to dream of a future they had thought impossible. They no longer saw themselves as a dying race, but as a people rising again. And at the heart of this change were the humans, those strange beings from a distant blue planet who had looked at them without fear, without judgment, and said, "You are worthy." The friendship that was forming was not without risk. The Valari knew the galaxy would not forgive easily. The humans knew their own governments might question their choices, but none of that mattered in the moment. What mattered was the bond, growing between them, built not on power or fear, but on understanding. The Valari, who had once been forsaken by all, were learning to smile again, and the humans, who had come only as explorers, were discovering something greater than exploration. The joy of being trusted, the honor of being accepted, and the beauty of building friendship where the universe had said it was impossible. The bond between the Valari and the humans was growing stronger each day, but friendship was never without tests. Beyond Valerian's skies, the galaxy was watching closely, and not all were pleased. Rumors spread across trade routes and political halls that humans were helping the Forsaken race. Some called it foolish, others called it dangerous. Old fears returned, carried on sharp whispers. The Valari will only bring ruin. Why are the humans protecting them? The first sign of trouble came in the form of warnings. Messages arrived on the human ship's communication system, sent by neighboring civilizations. "Leave Valerian," one message demanded. "Do not waste your efforts on those who cannot be saved." Another declared, "You risk your own people by siding with predators." These words were heavy, not just for the humans, but also for the Valari who overheard them. It reopened old wounds. Elder Maris gathered her council and the human crew in the great hall of the capital. The air was tense, filled with worry. "This is what we feared," one Valari elder said. "The The galaxy will turn against us again, and this time they may turn against Earth as well." Silence followed. Everyone knew the weight of those words. If the humans faced too much pressure, they might be forced to leave, just as others had. Done long ago. The human captain listened quietly and then stood. His voice was calm, but strong. "We knew this would happen," he said. "We knew others would not understand, but we will not leave you. Friendship is not a promise for easy times only. It is proven in hardship. And we are here to stay." Those words lit a spark in the Valari hearts. For so long, they had been abandoned at the first sign of difficulty. But now, here were allies who refused to step away. Tears filled Elder Maris's eyes. "You speak like no one else has ever spoken to us," she whispered. "Perhaps the galaxy will never understand, but today, we know we are not alone." Even as hope grew inside Valerian, another crisis struck. That year's harvest, which had looked so promising at first, failed suddenly. Strange winds carried a sickness through the crops, leaving fields yellow and lifeless. The Valari had little left in storage, and panic spread quickly. Families feared another famine. Children cried as their parents whispered about empty food stores. It would have been easy for the humans to step back to say, "This is not our problem." After all, helping meant giving away their own supplies, risking shortages for their crew. But instead, the humans gathered in their ship's meeting room and agreed without hesitation. They would help, no matter the cost. Cargo ships were sent, from their orbiting vessel down to the planet, filled with containers of food and medical supplies. The Valari stood in the fields as the ships landed, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had expected abandonment, but instead they saw generosity greater than they had ever known. Parents hugged their children as crates of food were opened, and young ones tasted fruits and grains they had never seen before. The Valari were overwhelmed. Some fell to their knees in gratitude. Others wept openly, their tears wetting the dry soil. "Why?" one elder asked the human captain. "Why do you give so much to us when others say we are not worth saving?" The captain answered simply, "Because no one deserves to be forsaken." Those words spread across Valarian like fire. They were spoken in schools, repeated in markets, and whispered in homes. For the Valari, they became more than just words. They became a promise that their people had value, that they were not forgotten. But this act of kindness did not go unnoticed by the rest of the galaxy. Some civilizations grew angry. They accused humans of interfering, of arming a dangerous species with survival. Meetings were held in distant councils, where leaders debated what to do about the Earth-Valari alliance. But no matter what was said, the humans continued their work quietly, ignoring the noise of politics. They were not seeking approval. From others, they were seeking to do what was right. Meanwhile, the bond between the two species deepened. The Valari worked side by side with the humans to rebuild their farmlands, learning how to strengthen crops against future failures. They studied new farming methods and mixed them with their ancient traditions, creating something stronger than either had alone. The humans taught them how to repair damaged tools, while the Valari shared old techniques of using crystals from their soil to power simple devices. Knowledge flowed both ways, a bridge built from trust and respect. It was during this time that Valari children began to dream differently. For generations, their lessons had been filled with warnings. Do not expect kindness from outsiders. Do not hope too much. But now teachers told new stories. Stories of human ships arriving, of strangers who became friends, of promises kept when the galaxy turned away. Little ones drew pictures of human explorers beside Valari farmers, smiling under the same sun. The crisis of the harvest became not an ending, but a turning point. It proved something no one could deny. The humans would not abandon the Valari, even in the hardest times. This truth reshaped the hearts of both peoples. One evening, Elder Maris invited the human crew to a gathering in the council hall. The chamber was filled with Valari of all ages, their eyes bright with anticipation. The elder stood and spoke, her voice steady and filled with pride. For centuries, we carried the name Forsaken. We believed no one would ever see us as worthy again, but today, because of you, we know that is no longer true. You gave us more than food and water. You gave us hope. And for that, we will never forget. The hall erupted in applause, the sound echoing through the great stone walls. The humans looked around in surprise, their faces touched with emotion. They had not come seeking praise or thanks, yet here they were, being honored in a way that words could barely capture. In that moment, the Valari felt something they had not felt in centuries: dignity. They were no longer the outcasts of the galaxy whispered about in fear. They were a people with friends who stood beside them. And for the humans, the trial of trust had proven what they had always believed, that kindness was stronger than prejudice and loyalty was stronger than fear. Though challenges still lay ahead, both species knew something had changed forever. Their bond had been tested in hardship, and it had endured. The Valari were no longer completely alone, and the humans had found something rare, a friendship worth any cost. Time passed, and the Valari slowly began to rebuild their world. With the help of the humans, the barren lands were becoming fertile again. Rivers that had been dry for decades flowed steadily, reflecting the bright light of Valerian's twin suns. Crops grew taller than anyone remembered, and markets once silent now buzzed with activity. Families worked together in harmony, their laughter carrying through streets that had long been filled with silence. The Valari were amazed at how much they had accomplished. Every field restored, every fountain repaired, and every new home built was a testament to what could be done when two species trusted each other. The humans never demanded praise or payment. They simply worked alongside the Valari, offering guidance, sharing knowledge, and lending strength whenever needed. The Valari began to see them not as visitors, but as part of their community, a family that had chosen to stand by them when no one else would. Elder Maris often walked through the rebuilt city, observing the people. Children ran freely through the streets, their hands sticky with the juice of sweet fruits, their eyes wide with wonder. Parents smiled, exchanging greetings with neighbors, some of whom they had not seen in years. The energy of life filled every corner, and the Valari felt a pride that had been absent for generations. They had survived, and now they were thriving. The humans also learned much during their stay. They discovered new plants, unique minerals, and strange but beautiful wildlife that could not be found anywhere else in the galaxy. They recorded everything carefully, making sure that nothing was lost to time. But more than the discoveries, they cherished the lessons of trust, patience, and friendship that the Valari had taught them. Despite coming from a distant world, they had found common ground, a bond that was deeper than any distance in space could ever separate. The Valari government began to reopen contact with other civilizations. Slowly, trade routes were restored, and messages sent to neighboring worlds described the Valari not as dangerous outcasts, but as survivors with loyal friends. Some civilizations remained suspicious, but others were intrigued. They wanted to understand how the Valari had survived, how they had rebuilt, and how humans had stood by them. Stories of the friendship spread across star systems, inspiring other outcasts and forgotten peoples to hope again. At the heart of the city, a monument was built in honor of the humans who had helped the Valari. It was not tall or flashy, but it stood in the main square where everyone could see it. The monument showed two hands reaching toward each other, one human, one Valari, symbolizing trust, help, and unity. Elder Maris often visited it, telling children the story of how friendship had saved their people. "It was not weapons or power that changed our fate," she said. "It was kindness, courage, and the choice to stand by each other when all others turned away. Even the Valari's youngest children learned about the humans not as strangers, but as heroes. They played games pretending to be explorers from Earth, racing across the fields to deliver supplies, laughing as they mimicked the humans' gestures. It was a joy the elders had never expected to see again, a generation growing up with hope instead of fear, with trust instead of suspicion. The humans did not stay forever, but when it came time for their departure, there were tears from both sides. Families hugged the crew tightly, and children waved as the ships lifted into the sky. The humans promised to return, and Elder Maris promised that the Valari would always remember what they had done. "You are part of our story now," she said, "and we will carry your friendship with us always." As the human ships disappeared into the stars, the Valari felt a mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness for the friends who were leaving, but hope because they knew the bonds they had built could never be broken. They had survived centuries of isolation, and now they had allies who believed in them. The galaxy might still misunderstand them, but the Valari knew that somewhere, far across the stars, there were humans who would stand by them if needed. In the weeks that followed, the Valari focused on building a future that reflected both their heritage and the lessons they had learned from the humans. Schools were reopened, with new classes teaching young Valari not just about survival, but about cooperation, trust, and friendship. New markets and workshops opened, combining traditional Valari crafts with innovative techniques taught by the humans. Life was no longer merely about surviving, it was about thriving. Elder Maris often reflected on how far her people had come. From a race labeled dangerous and abandoned, the Valari had become a people of hope and resilience. They had learned that being different was not something to hide, but something to be proud of. And they had discovered the most important lesson of all, that kindness and understanding could cross any barrier, even those as wide as the distance between planets. Years later, when Valerian had fully healed and the cities gleamed once more, the monument in the square still stood, now surrounded by flowers and laughter. Visitors from other civilizations came to see it, curious about the story it represented. And whenever Elder Maris walked past it, she would smile softly, remembering the humans who had chosen to stand by a people forsaken by all. The Valari had faced abandonment, fear, and despair, yet through friendship and trust, they had not only survived, they had grown stronger than ever before. And the humans, once strangers from a distant blue planet, had become part of their legacy, a shining example that even in the darkest times, compassion could light the way. The Valari no longer feared the galaxy. They were no longer alone. And every time they looked to the stars, they knew that somewhere out there, friends were watching, just as they would always watch over Valerian. The world that had once been forsaken was now a symbol of hope, proof that no one is ever truly alone if someone chooses to care. And so the Valari lived on, not just as survivors, but as a people united by friendship, strengthened by trust, and forever grateful to the humans who had shown them that the galaxy could still hold kindness.